I'm Matt Smith, and this is Max Loves Midland.
Welcome back to the Max Loves Midland Show. I'm your tour guide, Kevin LaDuke, and Max Loves Midland exists to align people, information, and momentum around a shared community vision and priorities so that Midland County becomes a place people choose, stay, and thrive. And no matter how you're watching or listening to this show today, we really appreciate you being along for the ride. You could be listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, Podbean, wherever you get your podcast content. But also, this show is now on the radio. So we're on WSGW. You can find us on 100.5 and 790. That's Saturdays at 9 a.m. and Sundays at 4 p.m. So check us out however you see fit. And of course, if you're watching on YouTube, thanks for being along for it. You get to see our beautiful faces today. And joining me today is somebody that is a father, a veteran, an entrepreneur, a community leader, and also the chair of America's 250 celebration here in Midland. Thanks for joining me, Matt Smith.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
So great to have you along for the ride. And I know that the water's back in Sanford now, and you are native to this area, kind of been part of your life ever since birth, really. So we appreciate you being here in Midland County. And I know with the water being back, you might want to be out on the water. So we appreciate you being here on the show today with us.
Yeah, thank you so much. And it is really cool to see the water back. It is interesting to look back, you know, being raised in Sanford, being raised around the lake, that culture of the community being revolving around the lake. And, you know, something like 2020 and the dam failure happening is so hard to wrap your head around. And then it's almost like over that 6 years, we got so used to the idea of there not being water that when the water was back, it was almost like Christmas every morning for a couple of weeks, like waking up and going, wow, we really have a lake back.
So I grew up out in the country. I'm from Beaverton. I grew up on 40 acres, hunting, fishing, having all the fun out there. And Wixom Lake was our lake, but we always went over to Sanford Beach when I was in high school. You want to go out with your friends, go see some girls, whatever it is. We're going over to Sanford Beach, and we talk about so many great things in our county all the time on Max Loves Midland. But this is the first time where, fresh in my memory, I can come back and say, wow, I went to Sanford Beach a couple weeks ago. It is just so fantastic to see that energy. Great place for families. Just we're so fortunate to have that asset here in the community. It's just fantastic.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, living in Michigan, we know that we thrive in these months that are nice. So with the lake being gone, the beach being empty, you know, it just gave people who are cooped up all winter, who looked forward to that opportunity during the nicer months, you know, we were kind of floundering. Like, where do we go? Where do we go find this before we hunker down for winter again? So having it back in our community, huge. It's absolutely huge.
So big. And beyond Sanford, I mean, you've went through military service, entrepreneurship, real estate, lots of volunteerism, involved with veterans advocacy. Man, there's such a cool story to tell here. So how do you go on this journey, right? Like, how do you go from a kid growing up in Sanford to this space now where I feel like you're kind of involved in a little bit of everything?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting to sometimes sit down and look at it, and like conversations you and I have had where you're almost forced to look back and kind of rehash it. And sometimes you don't realize what the journey's been until someone says, hey, tell me your story, right? And I spend so much of my time asking people to tell me their story that sometimes you don't really focus on your own. And it has been an interesting journey from the military to starting Smitty's Ironworks, to getting into real estate, and how the community life wove into all of that. And it just happened so organically. And I think I always appreciated the community as a small business owner, and always said, you know, this community has given me so much that how could I possibly not want to give back to it? And that's always kind of been a foundation. But the diversity, I don't know where the diversity comes from, quite frankly, you know, of like the diversity in nonprofits and the things that I love to support. It just, I guess when I see something and I love it and I love somebody's mission and what they're doing and the people that are doing it, I'm like, I'm on board. Let's go.
And what I love so much too is this really is a story about unity. And you and I in our pre-interview had a lot of conversations about unity and what this season looks like for unity for us. And I love that because everybody is so different. And we've had 40 some guests on this particular show. Everybody has different worldviews, different walks of life, different way that we live. But at the end of the day, like, how can we come together, and can Midland really be one of those places that can be a catalyst for unity? And that's a lot of the work that you and I are going to talk about. But I want to go back here a little bit. So when you decided to enlist in the Army, what was some of the motivation for that? And I know you have a familial story involved in that as well.
It really was kind of two major things in my life that directed me towards feeling like the military was the right place for me. One was a family history of military service, and the other was just being a person who was very grounded in the outdoors. I couldn't wait to get home from school, drop my books, and run out in the woods. And you're going to find me when you find me. Hunting, fishing, just being in the woods. It was so intrinsic to who I was that it felt like something like the Army just was the place that would be a natural fit for me. So all roads led there. As you and I discussed, I also kind of knew that I was not a traditional college-bound person, that the classroom was not my particular place of learning or where I felt like I learned best. And so that, again, led to, you've got college, you've got trades, you've got the military. And the military really was my path.
Yeah, and military being kind of your post-secondary avenue is such a big part of your particular story. And I know you served 3 years active duty and then 9 years in the National Guard, and you spent time in Mogadishu, Somalia. Mm-hmm. How did that experience shape who you are today?
Well, if you don't serve in a combat theater overseas and live a life of gratitude the rest of your life, shame on you. Really seeing up close and personal how other people live and how amazing it is here. That's just that should be an impactful part of the rest of your life when you have that experience. I grew up in Sanford. Heck, at that time, we hardly even came to Midland, let alone going anywhere else in the world. So here's a 19-year-old kid in a foreign country, in a different culture. Everything was just eyes wide open for me. And then coming home, and you get home, and you're like, wow, I can go to Burger King. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you don't like Burger King, it's pretty cool. It just that gratitude for being home, being here. We have been blessed through so many decades of conflicts throughout the world to not be where the conflicts happen. With the exception of 9/11, Pearl Harbor, you got to go all the way back to the Civil War. So when I look at these worldly combat zones and theaters and things and things that are going on, I go, our citizens here are so lucky that they just walk out the front door of their house and get in their car and go where they want to go. And they don't think about whether there's going to be an incoming shell or something like that happen. And there's a lot of places in the world that are not like that. So gratitude. Just a lot of thankfulness for where we are.
And something that really touched me that you talked about is that idea of when you're enlisting in the military, you really have to be a self-starter. You're getting up every single day and you're deciding, like, this is my path. I've chosen this. And I think that is such an interesting way to think about entrepreneurship, because I've never considered that idea with entrepreneurship, but they're so akin to one another.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The idea that you've, and I jokingly say this, all these years later, 35 years later, people ask me, like, where does the success in real estate come from? Where does the success in, owning and operating a gym and all that, where does that come from? And I refer back to boots, right? And I'm like, well, I learned at an early age, you get up in the morning and you put your boots on and you go to work.
Yeah.
And that was something that was just ingrained in us in the military. And it's just a way that you live your life in a way that you think about. And, whether I have appointments scheduled or whether I have a busy day with clients ahead of me or not, the first thing I think about is getting up and getting into the office and getting into my email and getting to work. It's just what I do, I'm also grateful that I had that background in the military that planted that seed in me, because I don't know that I would be where I am today without it.
Yeah, and that's like just connecting that to entrepreneurship. I think that's what people misunderstand about being their own boss. It's like, you have to get up and do this. Like, nobody is making you do this. You have to make yourself do this. And it's such a fantastic way of thinking about that drive of just getting up and going for it every single day. And I think about even being here. We record the show at J&C Media, and I saw Josh all weekend out at the Dow Championship, just getting up, putting his boots on, having the camera in hand. And it takes a special kind of person to actually go about that. And sometimes it's not meant for everyone, but it's definitely a path that I understand why you took. And I'm sure when people meet you, they might know you from real estate. They might know you from Smitty's. You have all of these different titles and hats that you've wore. But a lot of people's first introduction to you in Midland might have been Smitty's. So I want to talk about Smitty's a little bit. And for those unaware, Smitty's Ironworks was a gym that you own, correct? Is that okay?
Yeah. Julie and I started it. Ironically, Julie's maiden name is Smith also.
Oh, really?
So the Smitty thing was kin to both of
Well, there
us.
you go.
I mean, it really worked, to call it Smitty's Ironworks. So yeah, late 2002, I had this, I just had this dream. I was a member of a gym. It was called Superior Fitness at the time. People that have been around in Midland a while will remember that. And we were just really not happy with how it was run, how it was managed, how it was maintained, all these things. And I kept thinking to myself, I can do this.
Yeah.
I can do this, and I think I can do it better. And so I kind of approached Julie with the idea, and amongst a little bit of laughter, she was like, well, you don't have a business degree and you've never worked in a gym. And I paused for a minute and I thought, I think that might be what's perfect about it.
Yeah.
I think that might be what allows me to come in as a person who's only been a consumer of that service and knows what the people that I'm around all the time, what they want, what they deserve, how they want things done, how they would love to see things done, and just using that as the basis of what we do. And so literally I quit my job, and with really no money behind us and no background at all, we started Smitty's Ironworks. And, from early 2003 to 2015, had a beautiful season. It's a season of my life I will always love and cherish, even though it's not the season that I'm in now. I look back at it as just a great season of our lives that I'm really grateful for.
Feels like you figured out that secret, right? And we always somehow on Max Loves Midland, we always come back to basketball somehow here. So, and I've heard Ben Bosher talk about it on 100.9 as well. There's this specific story where Bill Simmons, he's a sports writer. He was out at the pool in Vegas and he ran into Isaiah Thomas, somebody who he had beef with forever, obviously. But Isaiah taught him the secret. And Isaiah said, when we were winning those championships with the 89-90 Pistons, it's because we knew the exact map to get there. We did it for each other. We did it with reckless abandon, and you kind of put everything beside you to go about for that championship, to go for that win. And you talk about visioning, and you talk about still investing in your business every single day. And recently, you and I were at even a Zing Train workshop together, and you consider yourself a lifelong learner. So as much as you're saying, I didn't have a business degree, it's like you got taught lessons in so many other ways, but then you embrace those lessons and you consistently reinforce them, and you're continuing to vision even until this day.
Yeah, and I don't know exactly where that comes from, where that drive or where that, it's really what fills my cup. And I think it's just something that we're either blessed to have or not have. But I will tell you that I try really hard to impress upon the people around me how great it is to adopt that lifestyle where you don't stop dreaming, you don't stop visioning, you don't stop, writing a business plan for yourself. And I mean, even if you're not self-employed, even if you work for a major corporation or a small business or something like that, you can still write a business plan for yourself. You can still think about the goals and the things that you want to achieve in the next year, and going through that exercise and kind of building on that and having those notes to look back 5 years ago and say, where was I 5 years ago and where did I dream about being? And then where am I today? And how well have I lived up to what I really wanted to see happen in my life? I think it's one of the only ways to become a high achiever is to have the ability to set that platform to be able to do it.
And you've taken these paths too that have went outside the box and in places that you didn't think you were necessarily going to land. And I love that the work you've done with youth too as well. And I know you used to coach track at Meridian, and then you've also been a volunteer at the Rock. And those situations have came about organically in different ways. And we talked about the importance of soft skills and just how important is it for young people to have a mentor that is able to have those conversations with them? It's more and more critical as our culture continues to shift. Yeah.
As we continue to become more and more dependent on technology, as we continue to become busier and busier in the home, I hate to say it, but the role of parents have changed. I wish there was still the traditional dinner, where the family comes together, but it's not where we're at. And I think it's okay to say that's not where we're at, and maybe aspire to be there as much as you can. But you've also got to be real too, and it's just not where our culture is. So in the absence of those things, or with the injection of technology, social media, all these different things, it becomes more and more important for youth that are at such a pivotal age for how their belief system is built and what things are impressed upon them, to have somebody reliable to reach out to be able to talk about things with. And it breaks my heart to see suicide rates go up. And I sit and I look at our culture and I say, well, how can we not expect it to go up when we've become more and more closed off?
Yeah.
So anything we can do in the community to reverse that and open the doors rather than close the doors, we have to do that. We have an obligation to do that.
And you always said that your mom kind of modeled that way of caring for others, and that, if somebody needs something, you really step up and you go to the plate. And you're definitely an example of that. You're also an example of, if you need something done, ask a busy person, because look at us here right now, right?
Yes. Yes.
But I think those are such good values of looking for ways to say yes when appropriate, and you can still take care of yourself. And it really teaches you a lot about emotional intelligence and empathy and perseverance and grit, and being able to then transfer those skills and those ideas to young people who might not be getting that influence other places. It's the definition of neighboring. It's the definition of community, and that's what we're trying to build here, right? A real neighbor-forward community where we take care of one another, a place where people step up, and that's the kind of Midland we really want to be. So really appreciate you assisting in building that and being in those places. And I know another thing that really happened around the same time you were transitioning from Smitty's is you went through Leadership Midland. Now, I went through the Leadership Midland program as well. And I know you went through in 2015. What was that kind of like for you? And how did that really mold your idea of really community involvement and maybe the way we collaborate here in our community?
Yeah, two things come to mind there. One, I knew that the Leadership Midland program was going to be a lot about learning and understanding the assets that we have in Midland. And I thought, well, I've lived in Midland my whole life, at least Midland County, been around Midland my whole life. So what possibly could I learn at this point? I was probably mid-40s when I went through, right? So I'm thinking, I know Midland pretty well. Well, that pre-homework that you do teaches you a lot about really the assets that are here. Really the things like, what is it like to ride dial-a-ride? What is it like to have to call them, stand outside and wait for a ride, get on the bus, ride around past where you need to get dropped off? And I walked away from that pre-homework portion of the class with, again, a greater appreciation for, one, the struggles that people go through, and two, what we have for assets.
Yeah.
So then we dive into that weekend, and it was probably, the intensity of the 3 days was probably a little bit easier for me, just because basic training, going to annual training every year in the National Guard, short, condensed, that's pretty easy for me. But what I loved was that it'd been so long and so far removed from my time in the military, where I saw a small group of people bond over the course of 3 days, to where you got to day 3 and you're like, these are my people.
Yeah. It's like family almost.
Yeah, this is my tribe, right?
Yeah.
These are the people that when I'm in a jam in the community and I need, where's this asset? Where's this resource? Where's this thing? These are the people I'm going to call. And, that was really, really impactful for me. And it caused me to want to stay involved in the Alumni Association and then become a member of the board of directors for Leadership Midland Alumni Association. And so I stayed really, really involved through that and continued to grow my tribe through being in the Alumni Association and seeing all the subsequent classes that came after mine. And, now it's an incredible network.
It really is. And it just shows you what's possible when people are willing to work together and step up and kind of put aside their own silos and say, what can we do for the greater good of this community? And when that happens, true magic can occur. And we want to be a beacon for our region, that this can be the type of place where we can continue to step up for one another and we can show, hey, we might not be able to solve, as you said, our nationwide problems. We might not be able to solve our statewide problems. And honestly, as a region, we're only one component of it. But how can we be an example of what's possible? And I really look forward to seeing our community grow. And as we have leaders grow, I think you're an awesome example for someone like myself to look up to say, hey, like, how can I step up and make a difference in the community? And that's why I think this conversation is so important and what we're doing today is so important. So right around that time, too, you were also transitioning out of Smitty's, like I said, and you went in with Greater Midland for a couple years and you helped them pioneer some ways that they could do some personal training. But after that was finished, it's like, now what, right? Like, I'm sitting here like, what do I do next?
Yeah. That is a really invigorating and hard spot to be in at that age. When you're like, holy cow, I'm 45. I really should have everything figured out. I should be on my path. I should be, settled in, doing my thing, biding my time. And there I was going, I loved my time at the community center, but I knew it wasn't long-term the place for me. And so trying to figure out where the place was outside of fitness after I'd done it for so long, real estate just really, really fell in my lap. I have a friend down in St. John's who does just outdoor realty.
Okay.
He just sells, farms, hunting parcels and stuff like that. And I'd met him through some conservation stuff in MUCC, and I looked at what he was doing, and I'm like, whoa, wait a second. I guess I didn't even really realize that was a thing.
It was kind of your OG brand, wasn't it?
Right. Yeah. I missed that day and career day, where we could do that, where we could go look at hunting property all day. So that was the original idea, was Matt Smith was going to sell hunting property and work with farmers and work, in rural areas and live out the rest of my days in a place that I just absolutely love. Well, so you never know exactly how your brand or how your model is going to be perceived by consumers.
Right.
But what happened was, the second I got my real estate license, all of these people that had come to know me through Smitty's and through the community center started to call and say, hey, I need to sell my house, or hey, we're looking for a new house. Will you help us? We'd love to work with you and whatever. And I'm like, okay. So I just right out of the gate, it was homes for me, sprinkled in with a few, outdoor properties. And the shift happened for me, and I was like, man, I love this more than I could have imagined that I love it. And looking back and looking at the day-to-day interaction that I get to have every day, it's the relationships. Yeah. I mean, it's the relationships, and it's so eerily the same as what I did in the gym every day. Like, people are like, Matt, fitness and real estate, it's like two completely different things. How do you go from one to the other? I'm like, well, they're different services, but it's the same relationship where you're listening to people. You're listening to them tell you about where they want to be, where they need to get to, what is a problem or a challenge that they have, and then you're helping to pave the way to get there. And it's the same thing in a fitness journey as it is in your journey to find a new home or to sell your home and move or whatever. So I get to do the same thing every day, and that's pretty cool.
Super awesome. And the reason not only just get to know more about you, but the reason we paint such a vivid picture here of where you came from, what you're doing now, what your experiences are, and how you feel about things is because I think it's the perfect culmination of what you've been doing with sharing with this America's 250 celebration, because all of these things that you talked about, convening, leadership, self-starting, and, obviously your experience in the military as well, and your experience with the Veterans Coalition really kind of leads itself to you being kind of the perfect candidate to be our fearless leader in this space. So as much as you might say, wow, am I the right person for this? I can tell you're the perfect person for this. And it's been awesome. So you've had a few community leaders approach you and say, hey, Matt, we want you to head up this thing. America's 250 is this year. Yeah. Can you get it started? Can you pull together some folks? And what does that celebration look like? So for those who are unaware, you can join us July 4th, and let's hear a little bit more about what we're doing with America's 250.
Yeah, so man, I am so honored and so excited about this. I'm at an interesting age where I remembered 1976, and I scrambled to try to find a picture because a person that I knew years and years and years ago, I mean years and years, like 40 years ago, Julie Hyatt from the Legacy Center.
Oh, yeah.
Julie had mentioned, I knew Julie when we were little. She had mentioned that she thought her mom still had a picture of me and her brother in our Uncle Sam hats and our little red, white, and blue Oshkosh Begosh overalls in these parades and stuff that we were doing in 1976, right? And so I do remember, I don't remember a lot about it, but I remember it. And that's a really cool place to be in as I look at America's 250 and I look at what a milestone this is and what an honor it is for us to be alive at this time, for one thing, and to be able to participate at a really intimate level with this. So, the idea is going back to 1976 and coming, now full circle 50 years later, we really want to create something that people will remember 50 years from now. So the people that are 10, 12, 15, 20 years old, what they experience today, when this community celebrates America's 300, will they remember what we did this year? And that was always the driving force. If you remember back to that very first brainstorming session where we just had the big, huge whiteboard and we said, let's dream.
Yeah.
Let's really just get the pen out and just put all down. And I have a picture of that whiteboard and all the ideas that came out that day. And I will always treasure that 90 minutes of just free ball, ideas being thrown out there. But it always came back to what will be memorable. What will be memorable and what will be impactful for people today, especially in the decisive times that we live in.
Yeah, and it's so exciting to just think about people being able to come together for a common thing. And, people vote differently, people have different religions, people come from totally different backgrounds. But is there a way that we can kind of rally around and celebrate around one specific thing? And the Declaration of Independence is one of the most profound things ever written on the history of this planet, if you ask me. Mm-hmm. And I know you're kind of a historian yourself, and looking at some of the lessons you want people to take away are some things that they might not know around the Declaration of Independence. You've taught me some things even. So what are some of those things you're hoping people walk away with?
Yeah. So, first and foremost, the author of the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson. And, there's always controversy around these public figures and, George Washington, Ben Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, how they live their lives. We can scrutinize and, we can do all that stuff just like we do with our leaders today, right? But when you look at their role in these things, I think there's a really impactful way to look at the vision that they had and what can we learn from that vision. So 2 years prior to 1776, Thomas Jefferson, at 31 years old, had written a summary review of the rights of British America. And, this was a writing at that time that was just rocked, the colonies. He was so young at that time and so not part of the political climate that he was not allowed to attend he He was not allowed to attend Congress.
Yeah.
So he had that letter delivered to Congress on his behalf. And that was really the start of Thomas Jefferson becoming who he became. When those guys got in that room, Continental Congress.
Yeah.
When they got in that room and they read this letter and they were like, wow, this is profound. And it happened at the same time as the Boston Tea Party. So you've got the Boston Tea Party, you've got the colonies rebelling against Great Britain, but they didn't really have a focus of what that rebellion meant or what they wanted it to look like.
Right.
And this was the first letter that kind of said, hey, listen, this is a vision of what this might look like. So 2 years later, as he's now a part of Continental Congress, and five guys were chosen to lead up that writing of the Declaration of Independence. And so the story goes, these two guys, John Adams and Ben Franklin, were two of the other guys in that group. They're much, much older than Thomas Jefferson, much more accomplished in their political careers and leadership and things like that. But they all looked at Thomas Jefferson and said, you're the guy. You're the guy that can write this. And so he sequestered himself in a room for a few days, and he knocked this thing out. And then that group, pared it down, and they kind of redrafted it. They pulled some paragraphs out that were maybe a little bit more aggressive than they wanted to be in this document. But that's how the Declaration of Independence came to be.
It's going to be so much fun, too. We're going to be right outside of Dow Diamond, in between kind of the East End building and Dow Diamond. And just want to shout out everything that the Michigan Baseball Foundation has done to be a part of this. And then also Three Rivers as well, because ultimately we're going to have a 50-foot tall Declaration of Independence that community members will be able to sign. And what are kind of the hopes for that specific event? Yeah.
So that idea of having a physical representation of the Declaration of Independence, when we talked about we need something for people to sign, right? Because one, when you sign something, there is a psychological connection to you signing your name to something. And so, that idea came out of it. And then the idea of it being larger than life. And we're like, well, how big can we possibly make this? And so literally I get on the phone with McKay Press and I'm like, can you make a 50-foot tall Declaration of Independence? Can you print that? And they're like, we can. And I was like,
can it withstand elements?
Done. I'm like, done. That is done. We got to have this. We got to bring this to the people. And then, shout out to Bill Stavropoulos. The very first thing that he asked me was, is that in the Guinness World Book of Records? Can we get in the Guinness World Book of Records for the biggest recreation of the Declaration of Independence? I'm like, I don't know. I don't even know how to research that. But going back to the signing, going back to having it there and the visual presence, and going back to unity that you spoke of earlier, the idea here is all the stuff we're going to do is fun. The 4th of July is fun. There will be cookouts. There'll be fireworks. There'll be all this. It'll be fun. What we want to achieve is a unifying, significant thing that people can come down, they can look at this larger-than-life document that they probably honestly haven't given much thought about since they were in high school and history class. Look at this thing, pick up a Sharpie, put their name on it, and signify the fact that, just like you mentioned, it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter how you vote. It doesn't matter what your belief systems are. It doesn't matter where you're raised. It doesn't matter what your annual salary is. That's your document.
Yeah.
That belongs to you. The Declaration of Independence belongs to us. And I think we have to get back to a place where we own that, where we own that idea that is our document. And this is how it came about. And we can still have those ideals today, 250 years later.
No matter what the background is, that history is going to bind us together. Mm-hmm. And such a defining moment for our country. And I think we're in our own defining moment of our country right now, whether or not we want to call it out specifically or not. We are. We're in a very defining moment for unity. We're in a very defining moment for how we interact with one another. I think we're in a defining moment for neighboring. Yeah. I think all of this is a component of why an event like this is so important, just to remind us, hey, we're all together here and we can pull for one another. So also with this event, there's a public reading component of this. And I think that's what makes this so great is because you have so many different people coming together to actually celebrate this, but also read it as well. So what can people expect from that portion?
Yeah, if you remember back to that brainstorming session, one of the big things that came out of that was this has got to be representative of everything our city, county, and area has and has been a part of for 250 years. And so as we started to list off who are the stakeholders? Who are the stakeholders in our area? And, it's boom, 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 Saginaw Indian Chippewa tribe and kids and adults and city and county and Coleman and Bullet Creek and Sanford and, all of these things. It developed into a really cool list of people, and we're actively making those calls right now. And then what will end up happening is when we have the final list put together, we believe that's going to be around 20 or 23 people.
Awesome.
Then we'll use, of course, ChatGPT to cut that into 23 perfect, 2-sentence segments, and then have everybody lined up and literally just rapid fire down the line, boom, 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 boom. But people that are there, they are going to see the makeup of our area. They're going to see everything, everyone, all the stakeholders, and I'm just really super proud of that, and really, really happy that we can bring that together. The calls that I've made so far for the people that are in town for Saturday the 4th, they are no hesitation. They are like, I am there. I cool. Can't even think of a cooler thing to be a part of than to get to read part of the Declaration of Independence on the 250th anniversary.
And people are going to hear some music. I know we've got some guests coming out. And what exactly are the timeframes of this event? We're thinking 3 to 4:30, correct?
3 to 4:30. Yep.
And then it's going to lead right into the city celebration, which is going to be happening down that way as well. And then at the end of the night, folks can experience the fireworks from the city of Midland, which is not part of our event, but it's all kind of one thing. And that's what I like is there's a lot of stuff going on for America's 250. And even with us, if you go to maxlovesmidland.com/250, you can see all the different events that are happening. I know there's an awesome one at the library. That one's taking place on the 8th. So if you can't make it out on the 4th, we ask you to go support that one and be a part of this. And I just think it's fantastic for people to have an opportunity to celebrate here in our area in multiple different ways. And I spoke of those fireworks, and you gave me some tidbits about the origins of fireworks, and I don't think people think about it. Like, why do we light off fireworks on the 4th of July?
Yeah, so on July 8th was the first public reading of the Declaration of Independence. So it's the first time it went from Continental Congress out to the general public. And as they publicly read this document, at the end, all these people who, at that time, everybody carried a firearm at the time, they all started shooting off their firearms. So it was bang, 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 bang going off. And ultimately, that led to the celebration every year with the discharge of firearms, signifying, the importance of this. And then it ultimately developed into rockets, and it developed into fireworks. And so I really hope that, whether you're able to join us or not, wherever it is that you're enjoying fireworks, I want you to think about these people in Boston and in Philadelphia in 1776 on July 8th, firing off their firearms in significance of this, and just think about what that really means rather than just looking at the cool colors in the sky.
Awesome. So is there anything else about this event that you want people to know, or you just want to remind them when and where?
Yeah, I think the other couple things that I would add in there that are fairly significant, in addition to the signing of the Declaration and the public reading of the Declaration, I was able to line up an Uncle Sam on stilts. So from 3 to 5, there's going to be an old time Uncle Sam on stilts.
Heck yeah.
Bring your kids out and let them see what you enjoyed, 50 years ago when that used to kind of be a thing. So that's going to be pretty cool. And then huge shout out to Chemical City Band. Chemical City Band will be playing the music throughout this event. And then also to Gretchen Shope. Gretchen Shope is a Delhi girl, graduated in 2024. She really just took off, and she's been touring all over the country. We're so fortunate that she's back here in Michigan on a break. And she said, I would love to be in Midland to sing the national anthem. So we've got some really cool stuff that's going to happen there between that 3 and 4:30 time frame. And then, stay down there, enjoy the food trucks, enjoy everything that the city has going on as well with Stone Street Revival, and then the fireworks. And just one image I want to leave you with, as the fireworks are going off across the river, they will be illuminating this 50-foot tall Declaration of Independence. So you will have an opportunity to see fireworks that are lighting up the Declaration of Independence. And I can't think of anything more spectacular to think about, as we celebrate America's 250.
It's going to be great. It really came together on a shoestring timeline. And just want to shout out to the entire committee as well that have been working on this. So Michael Goad, Evan Burdick, Janae Velasquez, Jacob Kane, Brad Tunney, Gay Terwilliger, and I'm happy to be able to play my role in just doing this little show and having fun here and being able to market in this way. And I think everybody brings their own skills, whether that's leadership, whether that's marketing, whether that's communications, whether that's working with the city. I think everybody has been able to bring their own skill set to help make this happen. And we hope everybody in the community comes and realizes their role in this, signs that Declaration of Independence, sees themselves in that, and sees themselves in community change here in Midland. And shout out to the other events going on as well. Like I said, Max Loves Midland /250. You're going to see a lot of other cool things going on. I know the Historical Society has been working their butts off to do some cool stuff. The library is going to have a great event, and there's going to be a lot of good stuff going on in Midland County. And hopefully this summer is truly a summer where we can all come together a little bit. And, it's a little poetic that the World Cup's going on right now. So you see the world kind of coming together on American soil. It's also at the same time where hopefully a lot of communities are coming together on American soil as well. So,
and it's a great point, Kevin, with those other events. There was discussion around, should we still do ours or should we just kind of incorporate into yours? And I was like, no. Please still do yours so that we have different opportunities in different venues on different dates. There's going to be people that are around for one and not the other. So, again, people just go to Max Loves Midland, look at that calendar, check out what's out there. Everybody has worked their butts off to put on some really cool stuff for the community.
And beyond this event, we always end the show the same exact way. And I always ask my guests, when you look forward at the future of Midland County, what are some of your hopes and dreams for this particular place?
Kevin, my hopes and dreams for this particular place is that we can be a catalyst for change in a micro way that ultimately someday has a macro effect. I can't think of a better thing to do and a better way to kick this off in a unifying event like this.
So cool. And thank you so much for being here with us today. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And also thank you guys for being here with us today. So no matter how you're experiencing the show, whether you're watching on YouTube, whether you're just checking out some short clips, whether you listen to us on the radio, we're on WSGW on 100.5 and 790 on Saturdays at 9 a.m. and Sundays at 4 p.m. We appreciate you listening. Or if you could be tuning in from Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, you can find us everywhere. And also make sure you're following along on social media. If you check out our TikTok page, every week we're putting out events videos. Those are getting a lot of traction, a lot of great hits, and a lot of people putting their own events in the comments. And if you're not hearing your event said in the video, make sure you're adding it to the community calendar. MaxLovesMidland.com. We've had over 7,500 events posted on that community calendar. That's over 7,500 opportunities for you to spend time with community members here in town, because after all, we want Midland to be a place people choose, stay, and thrive. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Max Loves Midland Show. We'll see you soon. And as we always end every episode, we do say, if you build a bridge and it doesn't work, just go for it and build a tridge. Thank you. Subscribe wherever you consume media. Max Loves Midland is your entertainment, resources, and collective improvement hub for Midland County. Plan your next adventure in Midland at MaxLovesMidland.com.